Hello, Year 7. Today we are starting our topic on fractions, and today we're going to be adding fractions. Fractions can be simplified using addition only if they are like fractions. That is, that they must have the same denominator. This means that they have been divided up into the same number of pieces. Now, same denominator. If two or more fractions have the same denominator, to add them together, simply add the numerators and keep the denominator the same. If, however, we have different denominators, then we must use our knowledge of equivalent fractions to convert them to fractions with the same lowest common denominator. To do this, we carry out these steps. First of all, we need to find the lowest common denominator. Now, often but not always, this can be found by multiplying the two denominators together. Next, we want to convert the fraction to their equivalent fractions with the lowest common denominator. And finally, add the numerators and write this as a total of the lowest common denominator. After adding fractions, always look to see if your answer needs to be simplified. Okay. So, the questions. Question number 1. If I want to add 1 over 5 plus 3 over 5. Now you can see that the denominators are the same. They are both 5s. If that happens, all we need to do is add the numerators together. 1 plus 3 is 4. And keep the denominator the same, so it stays as a 5. Even if there are 3 fractions, if the denominators are the same, so in question 2, we have 11, 11, and 11. They're all the same. So all I need to do is add all of those numerators together. So 3 plus 5 plus 6 is 14. Over, we don't change the denominator, so the denominator is 11. So 14 over 11. We could write that as a mixed numeral. So 11 goes into 14 once, and there would be a remainder of 3 over 11. Okay, but most of the time you're going to find that your fractions have different denominators. So in question 3, we have a denominator of 5 and a denominator of 2. If this happens, we want to find the lowest common denominator, and that is usually found by considering the factors of 5 and 2. Okay, now the lowest common denominator of 5 and 2 is actually 10, and that is just simply multiplying those two numbers together. 5 times 2 makes 10. So what I'm going to do is to make two fractions over here, two equivalent fractions that have denominators of 10. Now what I want to do is first of all take this first fraction, 1 over 5. I need to make it a denominator of 10. So that means that I would need to multiply by 2 to do that. So I also need to multiply 1 by 2. 1 times 2 is 2, and that is the new numerator. Now we're going to look at the second fraction. Okay, the first denominator, the original denominator, was a 2, and we want to make that into a 10. So that means we would need to multiply by 5. Multiplying 1 by 5, we would get 5 to go on the top. Once we are able to find the equivalent fractions, like I've done here, you can see that the denominators are now the same. And like in the first couple of examples, I can now add those together. I add 2 plus 5 to get 7, and the denominator of 10 stays the same. Okay, let's try that again. Question 4. I have two different denominators, 2 and 3. I want to find the lowest common denominator of the 2 and the 3, which would be 6. Okay, so I'm going to write two equivalent fractions with denominators of 6. So the first fraction, to get from 2 to 6, I would need to multiply by 3. So I multiply 1 times 3 to find the numerator. 1 times 3 is 3. Next, I need to go from 3 to 6. That would need to be times by 2. So I times the numerator by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, once we have the common denominator for those equivalent fractions, we add the numerators together. 3 plus 4 is 7. Over the denominator doesn't change, it is a 6. We can leave it as an improper fraction, or this one we can actually change to a mixed numeral. 6 goes into 7 once, with a remainder of 1 that we put on the top of the fraction over the 6, which was the denominator. Question 5. We want to find the lowest common denominator of 4 and 6. Now, up until now, we've been able to find the lowest common denominator by multiplying our numbers together. Okay, so we went 5 times 2 and we got 10. 2 times 3 is 6. And we could multiply these together to get 4 times 6 is 24. But that is not the lowest common denominator. If you remember talking about multiples, the multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, and so on. If I look at the multiples of 6, it is 6, 12, 18, and so on from there. And you can see in those lists already that I've got a multiple that is common to both of those, and it is 12. So I don't need to go all the way to 24. 12 is actually the smallest number that I could use for my denominator. So let's use 12. So 12 is going to go on the bottom of each of my fractions. Now, I need to go from 4 to 12. I would need to multiply by 3. So I multiply 3 by 3. 3 times 3 makes 9 to go in that missing spot there. Okay, next, I need to go from 6 to 12. That would be timesing by 2. So 5 times by 2 to give me 10 in the second fraction position. Once the denominators are the same, I can add the numerators together. 1 plus 10, 9 plus 10 is 19, and on the bottom we have 12. That is an improper fraction, so I could change that into a mixed numeral. 19 divided by 12 goes once, and I would have a remainder of 7, which goes over 12. Okay, if you happen to do that question with a denominator of 24, you would still be able to get the same answer. You would just need to simplify more at the end. So it is easier and often less work if you can find the smallest denominator to start with. Okay, let's try again for question 6. We have 4 and 5 as my denominators. The lowest common denominator of 4 and 5 is going to be 20, which is again found by just multiplying those two numbers together. So 4 times 5 is 20, 2 fractions with 20 on the denominator. So to find the new numerators, 4 would have to multiply by 5 to get to 20. So I go 3 times 5 makes 15 for the numerator. Now for the second fraction, 5 has to get to 20, so I would need to multiply by 4 this time. 2 times 4 is 8 for the second fraction. Now that the denominators are the same, I can add the numerators. 15 plus 8 is 23 over the denominator, which is 20. Okay, again, that is an improper fraction, so I can convert that into a mixed numeral. 23 divided by 20 goes once, with a remainder of 3 over 20. Question 7 and question 8, we are making this a little step harder by introducing some mixed numerals into the questions. Now, in order to be certain that you're getting the questions correct, the best way to do these questions is to turn them into improper fractions first. There are other methods that can be used, but they can get a little bit complicated, so the improper fraction is the best way to go. So 3 times 3, we multiply these numbers together here. 3 times 3 is 9, and then I add on the 2 that is on the top. So 9 plus 2 makes 11 over 3. That's how we convert a mixed numeral into an improper fraction. Let's do that again for the second one. To change 4 2/3 into an improper fraction, we multiply 4 times 3, which is 12, and add on the 2 on the top, which is 14. And the denominator stays as a 3. Now, this question happened to have the same denominator already. So if the denominators are the same, all I need to do is add the numerators. 11 plus 14 is 25. The denominator stays as a 3. Okay, now that we've added the fractions together, we can put that back into a mixed numeral. 25 divides by 3. Well, 3 eighths are 24. So it would go 8 times with a remainder of 1 over 3. Question 8 also has mixed numerals, so let's change those into improper fractions first. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus the 1 on the top makes 5 over 2. Then the second fraction, 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 more is 4 over 3. Now this time our denominators are different, so to make those the same, the common denominator of 2 and 3 would be 6. So I'm going to make 2 fractions with 6 on the bottom. Now the 2 needs to become a 6 down here, so that means I need to multiply by 3. So I do the same thing to the 5. I multiply 5 by 3 to get 15 for the top. Okay, now I look at the second fraction. The 3 has turned into a 6, which would be multiplying by 2. So I do 4 times 2, which is 8 for that top number. Once the denominators are the same, we add the numerators together. So 15 plus 8 makes 23 over 6. And then we want to change that back into a mixed numeral. So 23 divides by 6. Well, 3 6s are 18. So it's going to go 3 times. And then there'd be a remainder of 5 that we would put over 6 like this at the end. Now, you need to make sure that you can show all of this working out, but remember that you can use your calculator to help you with some of the multiplying, and you could also use your calculator to check your answers. So for example, if I wanted to check this last answer here, to type in those mixed numerals, I press the Shift button on my calculator and then this fraction button here, which brings up the 3 boxes on my screen. I type in the 2 and I use the arrow buttons to move across the screen. So 2, 1 on the top, 2 on the bottom. There's my first mixed numeral. Then I want to add a second one, so I press Shift and that fraction button again. With the 1, use the across arrow, 1, use the down arrow, 3. Once I've typed it in and I press the equal sign, it gives me my mixed numeral answer that you can see down here, 23 over 6. If I want my calculator to turn that into an improper fraction for me, I press Shift and this SD button down here, and it converts that to be 3 5/6. So the calculator has shown me that I have got the correct answer. Okay, so that's it for today. Time for you to practice.